We're live.
Hi, welcome back to Terri Reid's Attic. So, last week we had tractors and wind. The week before that we had howling wind. And today we're probably going to have thunderstorms. So, I just wanted to say our special effects with God have worked really well so far. So, welcome. Hopefully the thunderstorms will just be rumbly and we'll hear rain and nothing else. Andrew and I probably won't be running from the room screaming as a tornado bears down upon us. But hey, great video if we do. Probably we won't. So, I wanted to give a shout out to Aiden and Emily. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you're enjoying the stories. Also, a wonderful shout out to our wonderful Patreon subscribers. Thank you. We have a new special podcast that's going to be dropped this week before the end of the month. That is the special only for Patreon subscribers. So I hope you look forward to that. I hope you enjoyed the last one that we did. So last week when we finished, we were with Sean at Lincoln Park, where he found out that Lincoln Park was actually an old cemetery, and he met Augustus, who was the sexton for the cemetery. He took care of the cemetery. So let's pick up there, and then we'll move on. The next morning, when I got off shift, I went onto the computer, Sean added, and sure enough, Augustus Bates had been the city sexton during the time the old city cemetery had been closed down. Did you ever see him again? Mary asked. A couple of times I thought I caught a glimpse of him, he admitted, and I thought he waved at me, but it was always dark. So I guess I could have imagined it. But you don't think so, do you? Mary asked. Sean paused for a moment and then shook his head. No, I think what I saw was real, he said. I never thought I'd actually believe in ghosts, but there it is. Mary nodded. Yeah, there it is, she repeated. And I never thought I would believe in ghosts either. But sometimes she looked over at her mother and smiled shyly. So, what is the statute of limitations on not quite telling your parents the truth? Margaret studied her daughter for a moment and then sighed loudly. Seeing that it's Halloween, you have one free pass, she replied. Thank you, Ma, Mary said with a slight nod of her head. So, let me tell you became how I came to believe in ghosts. The noon bell had just rung, and the young girl stood in the doorway of her sixth grade classroom, watching the flurry of students, all dressed in the green and blue plaid of their Catholic school uniforms, rush towards the staircase that led to the lunchroom on the ground level. She waited until their noise had died down before she pushed herself off the door jamb and made her way downstairs to eat her own lunch of peanut butter and jelly sandwich, homemade cookies, carrot sticks, and ranch dip that her mother had lovingly prepared. How are you this morning, dear? Mary paused to smile at the elderly nun coming from one of the rooms at the end of the hall. It had become a daily occurrence for Mary to greet this woman every school day. I'm fine, sister, she replied. How are you? With a twinkle in her aging blue eyes, the sister would always smile at Mary and repeat the same phrase. It's always a good day when you get to meet a friend. Have a good lunch, dear. With a smile on her face, Mary would climb down the stairs to the lunchroom and wait in line to buy a carton of milk before she found an empty spot at one of the tables in the corner of the room. But today was different. Once the milk was purchased, someone across the room called her name. Mary! Mary O'Reilly! Come here and sit with us. Mary looked over to see Janice Hepner standing at a table on the other side of the room waving at her. Janice and her friends had been in Mary's class since first grade. Even then, there had been a distinct separation of the girls who would be popular and the ones who wouldn't. Even back then, Mary was one of the girls who ate alone and played alone at recess. She looked at the other girls at the table, their heads all turned in her direction, and she wondered if she had the strength to just walk away. No, she had to admit that a part of her dearly wanted to be one of them. So curiosity and peer pressure forced her feet to move from the quiet side of the lunchroom to the table where Janice and her friends sat. They slid over and opened up the spot for her at the end of the bench. Putting her sack and milk down in front of her spot, Mary sat down. "Hi, Mary," Janice gushed. "Guess what? I'm having a Halloween party on Friday night." Mary unwrapped the plastic from around her sandwich and picked up half. "That's nice," she replied before biting into it. "Do you want to know who's coming?" Janice asked. Knowing that her name would not be on the list, Mary shrugged. "Sure," she said, and bit down again. "Everyone who's cool is coming," Janice said. Yes, Mary thought, that would leave me out. "We were all thinking that it would be nice if you could come," Janice added. Mary nearly choked on her next bite of sandwich. "Me?" she coughed. Janice nodded her head. "Yes. And maybe your brothers could come with you?" Ah, here was the real purpose for the invitation, Mary sighed. Her twin brothers, Art and Tom, were several years older than she, and they were the star athletes at the high school. If Janice could get them to come to her party, she would have been in the same league as the high school popular girls. "Yeah, well, they don't do parties much," Mary hedged. They mostly practice and work out." "But it's Halloween night," Janice argued. "There wouldn't be any workouts on Halloween." She had a point, Mary thought. However, she couldn't come up with a polite way to tell Janice that her brothers would rather be dead than be seen at a middle school girls' party. "Well, I'll ask them and see if they want to come," she finally said. The girls around the table burst into excited chatter about the twins, taking Mary's polite response as a sure thing. Didn't any of these girls have brothers? Didn't they know the last thing older brothers wanted to do was anything that made their younger sister happy? Sighing, she took another bite of sandwich, which now tasted a little bit like sawdust, and tried to keep a smile on her face. "Oh," Janice announced as a polite afterthought, "even if they can't, come to my party, if you want to, you can just come by yourself." Why is it, Mary wondered nervously as she stared at her costume in the mirror on Friday evening, that when you want time to fly by, it never does, but when you want it to just stand still, it flies by? She was dressed as a witch. Black stockings, a black tulle skirt that went to her knees, a black turtleneck, and a witch's hat. Her brown hair had been caught up in a bun, and she actually had been allowed to wear real makeup. Not the kind that made you look like a clown, but the real makeup that accented your eyes and made your cheeks more distinct and rosy. She felt older and a little braver than normal. She felt sophisticated. The crowning accessory to her costume was the glittering black domino mask. It was just beautiful in its simplicity. Silver glitter and sparkling beads outlining the edges and the eye holes. It covered enough of her face that she was disguised. "Mary, you need to hurry or you'll be late to the party," her mother called up the stairs. She sighed. Her mother had been more excited than she was when Mary had told her about the invitation. She had gone shopping the next day to put together a costume that would make her daughter feel comfortable in the midst of the other girls. Coming, Mary called back. She slipped her jean jacket over her costume and jogged down the stairs. Oh, no, it's a lovely night. It's Indian summer, her mother said, sliding the jacket from Mary's shoulders. You won't be needin' that. But, Mom, I'm more comfortable wearing it, Mary complained. Hiding inside it, I'd say, Margaret replied, with a no nonsense look on her face. You go to the party and have fun. You'll be the belle of the ball. Fine. Thanks, Mom, Mary sighed, reaching up and giving her mom a kiss on the cheek. I won't be too late. Just have fun. That's all that matters, her mother replied. The walk to Janice's house was actually fun. Young trick-or-treaters lined the sidewalks, their bags heavy with their candy, and their eager faces ready for more houses and more doorbells to ring. They dashed from house to house as tired parents waited on the sidewalk, calling to their children and reminding them to say thank you as the treats were dispersed. Mary grinned. It wasn't that long ago that she was one of the children on the doorsteps, bag held out eagerly, looking for her favorite treats. She really wished she was still of that age. She finally reached Janice's house. Janice's dad was a doctor, and their house was huge. It was the last house before the forest preserve on Foster Avenue and took up several city lots. The front lawn was decorated with orange pumpkin lights, an animated coffin, and trees filled with hanging ghosts. White luminaries lined the sidewalk that led to the front porch and the deck on the side of the house. With a sigh, Mary started down the sidewalk towards the house. Maybe I shouldn't be so negative, she thought. I might have a good time. I might discover that I do have something in common with these girls. They might decide they like me and want me to hang out with them. She's coming, but her brothers aren't. The loud voice drifted towards Mary from over the deck rail. Ugh, that's so lame. We should have known she would ruin things. Mary froze. Well, it won't be that bad, another voice said. And then there was a pause, followed by a giggle. Okay, yes, it will. Well, we don't have to be nice to her, the first voice laughed. We can just sit her down in the corner and give her some food, just like in the lunchroom. The resounding laughter caused a pit in the middle of Mary's stomach. She felt like she was going to get sick right there on the front lawn. Oh, yeah, that will make my popularity rise at school, she thought bitterly. There goes the lunch corner girl. Puke girl. Without a second thought, she turned around and walked away, not aware of where she was going or the tears that were sliding down her cheeks. She had walked for several minutes before she realized she was following a path through the forest preserve. She stopped, wiped the moisture from her face, and looked around. She took several deep breaths and reminded herself that she knew what those girls were like. So they just lived up to her expectations. Now, her only question was what to do with the rest of her evening. She knew if she arrived home early, her mother would find out what happened, and Margaret Mary Elizabeth O'Reilly would be marching down the street into Janice's house and demand an apology from all the girls at the party. That would be mortifying. Then a thought occurred to her that had her standing up straight. The lost cemetery. She'd heard stories about the old cemetery that was hidden in the corner of Labaugh Woods. Her brothers spoke about seeing floating balls of light and hearing voices, but they had always told her that she was too young and she would get frightened. She straightened her shoulders and took a deep breath. Well, she wasn't too young tonight. and she would earn a little respect when word got out that instead of going to a stupid party, she spent Halloween in the lost cemetery. She ran down the path towards the wrought iron fence that separated the woods from its neighbor, Montrose Cemetery. The trees on her side of the fence formed a line a few feet away from the fence, creating a canopy of bare branches above and a carpet of dried leaves below. The lights from the cemetery were enough to guide her along the way without tripping. Finally, she came to the old chain link fence at the far end of the park. A little way beyond the fence was the bank of the Chicago River, and just before the river, in an overgrown clearing, was the cemetery. Mary followed the chain link fence until she found the hole her brothers had told her about. She pushed through it, catching her stockings on a sharp piece of link and snagging them, but she continued on into the underbrush. The woods were darker here, and she wished she had thought to bring along a flashlight. But there was a full moon, and most of the tree branches were bare, so she had enough light to see. The narrow path to the old cemetery was obvious. Stamped down vegetation and bare dirt marked the way through the trees and the brush. As she moved forward, her heart beat in anticipation. Would she see floating lights or hear the voices of those who had passed away? She slowed her pace as she entered the overgrown woods. Maybe this wasn't such a great idea, she thought, thinking about all of the scary movies she had ever seen. This is the kind of place where people are killed and no one ever finds out what happened to them. She swallowed nervously and slowly looked around. The forest separated her from everything. She couldn't even hear the traffic from Foster Avenue anymore. Could anyone hear me scream? A noise ahead of her made her jump and caused her heart to race. Someone was coming. The sound of unruly male laughter drifted down the path, and slurred voices accompanying a litany of words that she was not allowed to use. She looked around for a place to hide, but there was nowhere to go. Finally, deciding that her black outfit might hide her if she was closer to the ground, she knelt down and crawled into the brush away from the path. Branches, thorns, and rocks bit through her thin clothes, but she continued on, trying to make as little noise as possible. But when her knee came into sharp contact with a big rock on the ground, she couldn't help it. She cried out, "Ouch!" "What the hell was that?" she heard one of the voices cry out. "A ghost," another voice said, giggling wildly. "Shut up," the first, angrier voice ordered. "If someone is out here and saw us, we need to make them go away." Mary curled up next to the stone that was flat and square and tried to make herself as small as possible. "Please, God," she prayed, tears squeezing out from eyes clamped shut. "Please help me." "Put that flashlight down, you idiot," the angry one yelled. "You want to bring the cops here?" "Sorry," the other voice replied. "I just thought it would help." "I think the sound came from over here," the angry voice said, and Mary felt the brush near her tremble with movement. "Please, God, please," she prayed. Suddenly, the forest was filled with sounds, like thousands of cicadas suddenly coming to life. "Dude, what's that?" asked the giggler. "Nothing but bugs," the angry one replied. But then the sound changed. It was no longer the rustling chirps of the cicada. The sound was now more of a chant. Leave this place. Leave this place. Leave this place. In echoing voices that seemed to come from everywhere. This is not cool. The voice was now frightened instead of cheerful. Who's doing this? Leave this place. Leave this place. Leave this place. The volume increased as if more voices joined the ethereal choir. Leave this place. Dude, I'm out of here, the giggler cried, and Mary could hear his footsteps racing down the path. Get back here, the angry voice called, his voice shaking. I'm not afraid of this. Suddenly, the woods were silent as the inside of a tomb. Mary held her breath and grabbed hold of the rock, hugging it for dear life. Then she heard the scream. It seemed to have been pulled out of the depths of the angry man and echoed through the woods. No, 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 he stammered. And then she heard his footsteps racing down the path. She lay still, hugging the stone, her breath coming out in short gasps. She didn't know if she was safe or in even more danger. You can come out now. The child's voice was so out of place that Mary instantly looked up. A young girl dressed in a pinafore and print dress stood next to Mary. My father frightened the bad men away, the girl added. You don't have to be afraid. Who are you? Mary asked, releasing the stone and sitting up. The child laughed softly and pointed down to the stone that Mary had been hugging. That's me, the little girl replied. Mary looked down and gasped, realizing for the first time that she had been hugging a gravestone the entire time she'd been hiding. The moon shone down on the granite slab, and she read the inscription, Fanny Schwepler, born October 31st, 1840, died April 28th, 1848. She looked back up, but the little girl was no longer there. A chill ran down her spine, and she hugged herself for a moment, not trusting her legs to hold her. I have just seen an actual ghost, she thought. Not only that, a ghost family just saved me. The fear subsided, and gratitude took its place. She put her hand back down on the granite slab. If there is ever something I can do for you, she whispered, I will. I owe you. Finally, she stood, brushed herself off, and slowly headed back down the path, listening carefully for any noises that might indicate the two men hadn't been frightened away for good. She breathed a sigh of relief when she reached Foster Avenue and then jogged the rest of the way home. The following Monday, the noon bell had rung, and Mary stood waiting once again until the crowd cleared out. She walked slowly towards the stairs and met the elderly nun once again. Good morning, sister, she said with a smile. How are you today, dear? The nun asked. Mary thought about that question for a moment. How am I, really? And then she realized she was fine. She was more than fine. She was great. Oh, great, she replied confidently. I'm really great. The old nun chuckled and nodded slowly. It's always a good day when you get to meet a friend. Fanny sends her regards. Have a good lunch, dear. Thank you, sister, Mary responded automatically, then stepped forward and then stopped. Fanny? She turned quickly. Sister, how did you? No one was behind her. She ran back into the hall, peeking through the doors in the classrooms closest to where they had been standing. No one was there either. She started to run back down the hall, but stopped and shook her head. She knew the elderly nun would not be in any of the classrooms or anywhere in the school. It's always a good day when you really get to meet a friend, she whispered, and then shivered a little when she heard the sound of the elderly nun's laughter echo softly in the hall. I never liked that Janice Hepner, Margaret said determinedly. Always just a little too full of herself. She looked over at her daughter. I wish I had known how those girls treated you. Mary smiled and rolled her eyes. Mom, that was over 10 years ago. I've recovered, believe me, she said. Besides, it was one of the coolest nights of my life. I mean, how often does a person actually get to see and talk to a ghost? Well, I don't like the fact that you put your life at risk going to that cemetery in the middle of the night, Timothy grumbled. Why, if I had known. Sorry, Da, but Mom's given me a free pass on this one, Mary replied. You can't give me a hard time about it. You never told us, Sean said. You kept that story to yourself all these years. Why? Struggling, Mary studied the flame in the jack-o'-lantern for a moment and then turned to her brother. I don't know, she said. Partly, I guess, because I figured I'd get in trouble if I told. She sent an unrepentant grin to her father. And partly because it was such a cool experience. I didn't know if just telling the story would do it justice. Did you ever see the nun again? Timothy asked. Mary shook her head. No, after that I never did. And I actually missed her. I always felt like she was looking out for me. I suppose she knew you didn't need to be watched over any longer, Margaret said. Or maybe you just didn't need to see her any longer. What do you mean, Ma? Art asked. Well, just because we can't see them doesn't mean that ghosts aren't around, she replied. Tom chortled, popping some candy into his mouth. Yeah, like there are ghosts here in this room right now, he scoffed. Margaret shrugged. Could be. You never know. Okay, Tom said, standing up and slowly turning around the room. If there's a ghost in this house, let your presence be known. Suddenly, the candle in the jack-o'-lantern went out, and the room was plunged into darkness. That was just a weird coincidence, right? Tom asked, his voice shaking slightly. Margaret laughed. Could be, she whispered. You never know. The end. Now, those stories, because people have asked, have been taken from Tales Around the Jack-o'-lanterns, books 1, 2, and 3. So we just finished the first book. And I think, how are we doing time-wise?
We have been on 29 minutes and
nice.
a few cents.
Okay, so next week we'll start the second book. And it starts with a story from, let's see, who starts? It's Margaret's story at the very beginning. It's one of my favorite stories. So we'll start with that next week. So any questions? This is this new YouTube thing. So Andrew's at the controls. So I just have to sit here and maybe be intelligent when I answer questions.
I'll just tell you some of the comments
Comment?
that we've gotten
Okay.
so far. Dawn said that she can't wait. This was before we started
Okay.
Kitty said that she was so excited for this.
Nice. Hope I didn't disappoint you. Hope you had a good time.
Teresa said hello.
Hi.
And someone else responded, hello, Teresa. Cithros. Dawn just learned how to play this from my laptop to the TV.
Oh, cool. We've been playing around with that same idea, the from the phone to the YouTube. Sometimes, when you have a dad in the house, it can get a little annoying, but for the most part, it's been a really cool thing.
So Kitty asks,
Okay.
what's your favorite way to brainstorm?
Oh, actually, it's fun having Andrew in lockdown with me at home from college because he's a writer and he does screenplays and films. And so having another person in the room and playing the what if game. So what if this happened? I love that. I love the idea of tossing ideas back and forth. As a matter of fact, Andrew's got a project at school that he's got to write a short screenplay for. And this morning we all took a walk on the Jane Addams Trail, and it was about 2.5 mile walk. And during it, we were talking about ideas for his screenplay, and some of them got bizarre. Those would be mine, and some of them were very good. Those would be Andrew's. Actually, and my husband actually came up with a really good idea. I think I knocked the microphone, so I apologize for that bumpy sound. So yeah, so I think to me the best way is having a person there and saying, so what if this happened or what if that happened? So I hope I answered that question.
Nancy Adams says, thank you. Missed a few minutes at the beginning. It was really enjoyable. Love your reading tone.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And sometimes it's kind of tricky to read the words and look up and read the words. So if I stumbled a little bit, thank you for excusing that. But I love doing this. This is so much fun.
Teresa said, I love so much that you're doing this.
Thank you. It's fun for me, except when I stumble over words. But for the most part, it's fun. When you're typing a word, you don't think about somebody having to pronounce it. Synchronicity. Ta-da! Cicada. That was another one today.
I thought it was pronounced cicada.
Cicada? It could be. Let's just say that's the Midwestern accent way to say it.
Yes,
It could be cicada. You guys knew what I was talking about, those ugly little bugs that crawl out of trees. So, yes. See? Writers shouldn't have to read things. Okay. Any other questions?
Kitty said, interjecting polish into Mary's stories. And then Teresa said, by the way, this Teresa is Terry Snyder.
Oh, nice. Hi, Terry. Oh, it's showing you up as Teresa, which is Therese is my actual legal name. So nice. Good to see you. Good to see you virtually, I guess. So nice. So this story, there is actually a lost cemetery in LaBaugh Woods. And when I was growing up in Chicago, that was the creepy place. I mean, there were stories about voices like that. So that's why I'd walked where Mary walked. I was also the girl in the corner with the peanut butter and jelly sandwich. I totally understand, Mary. But yeah, that is a real place. And and the kids used to all go down to the lost cemetery to see if they could hear voices. So it was kind of fun to be able to put Mary in that situation. Other questions?
No more questions yet, but
Okay.
I got some validation. So Nancy said, no offense, but I agree with your son on cicadas.
Thank you, Nancy. So, I'm not going to be able to live with him now.
Then Dawn said, you barely stumble at all, and I'm enjoying hearing the story.
Thank you, Dawn.
From you, so I don't even notice.
Thank you so much. Okay. Self-esteem built just a little bit more today. Thank you.
Ooh, okay, here's a good one from
Okay.
Nancy. Do you feel that the more you study / write ghost stories, that you then have more experiences with ghosts?
Yes. Yes, I really do. And I don't know if it's because as I'm paying more attention, I'm opening myself up more, but I truly have noticed that over the years, the more I write these stories, the more experiences I have had. I had one experience a couple of years ago. So when my office was on my husband says that I've moved my office to pretty much every single room in the house. Not quite, not the kitchen. Anyway, or the bathrooms. I've left those alone. But the back bedroom, which is now a guest back a bedroom, I had that as an office because it was a nice way to seal myself off from everybody. And one night, it was probably, midnight. I had the door open to the back hallway. And the back hallway is where, Grandma Molnick's would always hang out. And, so we had experiences in that back hallway. And I'm writing and I felt like somebody was watching me. You know that feeling where it's like kind of on the back of your neck? And I turned and obviously there's nobody there standing in the doorway, but it felt like somebody was just standing in the doorway. I went back to writing, but it really bugged me. So finally I turned and I looked at this empty space and I said, I'm really trying to write. And when you just stand there and watch me, it freaks me out. So if you would leave, I would really appreciate it. A few minutes later, it was gone. It's like he listened. And it felt like a guy. Is that really weird sounding? But it felt like probably Grandpa Molnick's. So yes, that was a really long answer to a lovely question. Yes, I do feel the more I write about it, the more I research things, the maybe more I'm open to it, the more experiences I have.
I'm not gonna lie, I've had similar experiences as well. I'm the guy behind the camera, so I'll make it very, very, very brief. But I've been doing a personal project involving ghosts, and there have been a few times at night while this is like my office slash bedroom slash studio, and so it was up here. It was night, and I was trying to sleep, and I was I'm laying perfectly still, and that's when I hear like a shift in the floorboards, and that happens every once in a while at night. That's actually happened quite a lot these past few weeks.
Right.
And so
is that a puppet right there? Right. The gray thing.
Oh, on top.
Yeah.
That's called the dead cat cover.
Because I almost feel like I ought to be doing this so that you could like, okay, this is Andrew talking because no one can see you.
Yeah.
I'll get a puppet for next week.
I'm just the ominous noise from the side. So Katie or Kate Gulick said, "Ghost stories are always amazing. Will you consider story hour after lockdown ends?"
Maybe not as often. I don't know. I hadn't considered it. I just thought, to me, it was like, gosh, you guys are. I'm putting on the Andrew puppet right now.
That is how I look. Just letting you know.
He really needs a haircut. You really need a haircut. I just figured people were at home and bored, and I remember, raising my 7 kids, and if we were all home at the same time, I would really appreciate being able to, turn on the computer and say, "Oh, let's listen to the scary lady." And so, but yeah, if there's an interest, I think we could keep doing it. Could we keep doing it until Andrew goes back to school? Because he's the guy that does it all. So yeah, we'll just enjoy it until he has to go back to school.
Let's see. So Nancy says, "Do you feel that the more you stack?" This is hard to do because I can see you. Do you feel the more you study / write ghost stories that you then have more experiences with? Oh no, you already answered that. Never mind. Dawn asks, "Do you think growing up in Chicago helps you write your stories since it's so thick with history?"
Yes. Yeah. I mean, Resurrection Mary. So growing up in Chicago on Halloween night, you could turn on WGN radio, and what was his name? Richard Beard, maybe. He was like the ghost. He recently passed away, but he was like the ghost expert, and he'd always be on WGN late on Halloween night, and he would tell stories about ghosts from Chicago. I love that. But also, growing up, being Irish in Chicago, I mean, we shared our own ghost stories. And then, the resurrection, no, not the resurrection, Mary Worth, if you went into the bathroom and the lights off, or if there's different versions, and you'd say, I believe in Mary, and she would come out of the mirror and scratch your face. It's like, why would anybody want to do that? But, or wasn't there a version where if you stood under a tree, she would climb down from the tree and choke you? Again, why would we want to do that? But there was all those kinds of things. So I grew up in this uh, atmosphere that was filled with wonderful things for my imagination.
It's always Mary, Resurrection Mary, Bloody Mary.
Well, see, if you grow up Catholic, all the girls had to have a version of Mary in their name because of the Virgin Mary. So in my family, my middle name is Marie. I have a sister named Maureen, and I have a sister named Mary. And my mother's name is Virginia, which was so yeah. So that could be why, and they're good Irish names, so that could be why too.
Terry said, and the ghosts probably know that you believe, and they gravitate towards you. Also, she's very interested in you continuing doing this even after.
Ah, thanks. Isn't that an interesting thing to think about, that ghosts, and I know that there's like ghosts that are just shadows, residual, they've done something, they walk down the stairs every day of their life, so their shadow kind of walks down. But then there are intelligent ghosts who can interact with us. But isn't it interesting to think about a ghost perspective? That ghost recognizes somebody who would be open to them communicating with them, or I think that that's a really kind of interesting, kind of like the movie, is it The Others?
Yes. Great movie.
Yeah, the ghost perspective on living in a house like with humans. How did this ghost feel when I repaint the living room and this was their house? It just, and I don't ask, but anyway, but yeah, I like that idea.
Just imagine painting on the wall. I like this shade.
That's right.
Good job.
Good job.
Ominously painted. Nancy said, so since your great-grandparents kindly haunt your, since my great-grandparents kindly haunt your home.
Yes.
Does
Hi,
that
Nancy.
make me an internet celebrity by association?
Yes, everybody. Meet Nancy, formerly Molnick's, now, okay, I'm going to say your name wrong. Niederer? Did I say it close to?
That's what it looks like to me.
Okay.
You pronounced it better than I could have.
Okay.
We all know how I pronounce things, so.
Yes, so she's famous because her great-grandparents haunt our house.
You pronounced it correctly. Niederer.
Yes! One of the few words that I have pronounced correctly today. So yes, so you are a celebrity. Everybody meet Nancy. Da, 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 da. How's that?
Let's see. Nancy Adams, different Nancy,
okay,
said, do you believe in angels in human form?
Oh, okay, so I have a couple ideas about that. First of all, I believe that we get to be angels. So I don't know if that's what you meant, but I think often we get prompted to do something and we get to act as angels for people. And so I'm always very careful that when I get a prompting that feels like, a spiritual prompting, like go call that person or you need to do, I always listen to it because I think that God uses us to bless other people's lives. But that might not be where you're going. I have heard so many stories about people receiving things that they needed or help that could not have come from a human, but it was in human form. Does that make sense? And so yes, I think angels can come in human form. I think that, you're stranded on the side of the road and somebody appears and they've got just enough gas for you to make it to the next gas station, and you look and they're gone. That happens, I think, more often than we know, than we think. But yeah. And I believe in hearing, okay, hearing voices. That sounds a little odd, but I've had experiences in my life where I've been driving down the road and I hear somebody say, slow down. I tend to be a little bit of a lead foot, but I do hear somebody say slow down, and I really slow it down. And I realize, like, 20 more minutes away, there had been an accident. And had I continued at the same rate of speed, I probably would have participated in that accident. So I really do believe that there's angels all around us, and we just need to look for those tender mercies and see them.
Don said, this was a little bit earlier.
Okay.
I loved his stories. I'm assuming the guy whose name I already forgot, but the guy who did the ghost stories in Chicago. And I grew up in Chicago, right close to Resurrection Cemetery, and my family is buried there.
Cool. I bet you've got some really great stories. I'm a North Sider, so I grew up Cubs fan, and the closer cemetery to me was Graceland Cemetery, which is really, if you haven't been to Graceland Cemetery, that's a cool cemetery too. I just went last fall with my sister, and I think we spent a couple hours just walking around and taking pictures. But yeah, I've never been to Resurrection Cemetery. That's on my bucket list. That would be a fun thing. I don't think I'll go at night. I think I'll go during the day. But yeah, so that's cool.
Terry Snyder said, when my oldest granddaughter was 2, she was in the church nursery and saw a picture of a little girl angel. She stopped playing and said, that was me when I was in heaven.
Okay, chills. Have you heard that Reader's Digest story? It was years and years and years ago. There was a little girl, she's a toddler, and there was a new baby in the house, and she kept saying to her mommy that she needed to have some time alone with the baby. And the parents were a little bit like, I don't know if that's a great idea, because they were kind of concerned there was some jealousy going on. But finally, after the little girl kept asking, she said yes. But the mother then hid in the hallway behind the open door so she could peek and see what was going on. And so the little girl went to her little brother's crib and put her little face next to the bars and said, "You need to try to remember. You need to try to remember um, about God in heaven, because I'm already starting to forget." And I loved that story. I love the idea that these little spirits who came here for a while remember what heaven was like, and now they're here, and slowly that remembrance closes down so they can operate here in the real world. But I love that story that you shared. Thanks.
Nancy Adams said, have you met a person and looking at them, you know they are a spirit or angel?
No, I don't think I have. I would love to hear about that story if you have had that experience. I haven't. That would be. I have met somebody, and it was the total opposite. I have met somebody and I looked into his eyes and I knew that I needed to walk away from that person because he wasn't an angel. He wasn't good. But I haven't had that experience. That would be an awesome experience to have.
Yeah, Nancy said definitely.
Yeah.
So,
Ooh.
Are there any more questions that you have? We're getting to about 50 minutes here.
Oh,
We're coming
wow.
up to that pretty soon.
So I got to say, Aiden, I saw what your mom posted on Facebook today about you, and I needed to share with you. I have 4 sons. Andrew is the youngest. The 3 older ones, when they were all at the house, they would make certain noises. Um, bodily function noises, if you know what I mean, in a band. That was their band. They would sing songs. One son would like hold his hand over his mouth and make those kind of noises in it. Another one would take his shirt off and use his arm and make noises. And another one would actually lay down on the floor and use behind his knees. And they would all perform this together, making flatulent noises. Is that a better word to say?
Sure.
So I thought about that today when your mother posted certain things on Facebook that I won't bring up, but it's a boy thing. It is totally a boy thing.
I think that they stopped doing public tours about 10 years ago. So, but yeah, I think you can find their album if you go to iTunes. So iTunes called Fake Flatulence. I was trying to think of something clever, but I'm not. Terry Snyder said, I know someone who thought that the reason babies die so young is that they died before their time and Earth and came back as a baby to complete their life.
Oh, that's an interesting concept. Yeah. So we could get into a whole religious thing, but yeah, I think sometimes babies die young because they were so perfect before they came here. All they needed to do was get a body, and their test was done. That's all they needed. But yeah, they're just so amazing. So yeah, that's interesting. That's an interesting idea.
So Nancy said, now that's talent. Bring back the band one last time.
I know, right? It was so much fun. The songs they could sing, and when they got up to the upper register,
stop that.
So
speaking of which, Nathan was just calling. So
he probably heard.
Yeah,
I'm in trouble now.
His ears are burning right now. Somebody's talking about me. Terry Snyder gives us permission to go ahead and say fart. Thank you.
Thank you. My mom wouldn't let me use that word. We had to say pass gas. It took me a while to say that word with my kids.
Jenny, for a while, she didn't let
her kids say. That's my oldest daughter. Yeah.
But I think what she had them say was a little bit sillier.
What was it again?
Butt laugh.
Right. That's right.
Yeah. So that's much better than saying fart.
So, yeah.
Um.
This has really gotten silly.
Yeah.
Sorry, and I started the silliness.
That's okay. And then Don says, Andrew, I hope your college/university gives you credit for being a producer of this. I do too. I haven't even thought about that.
Your internship.
This could be an internship. For now, a non-paid internship.
Sorry. Yeah.
Hey, we're hoping, we'll keep climbing the ladder.
It does sound bad though. My mommy gave me an internship.
That is true.
So, well, but hey.
So instead, I'll just say a world famous,
internationally known
author.
That's right.
Internationally known podcaster and YouTuber.
Because we are international. Thank you, all of you guys in the UK that are listening. Yes. Mm-hmm. Cool. All right.
Now we just gotta spread word around and get more people so that we could start getting paid for this too.
Yeah, that would be nice.
That'd
be a nice thing.
So, now people are sharing what their families call it. Kit says, my husband's family is past the pig. Terry Snyder, bottom burp is what I use to tell my kids.
Bottom burp. That's interesting.
Yeah. I don't know what I'll probably just call it a fart. But yeah, so we're almost at 55 minutes.
Okay. So any more questions? And you know what? We didn't get the thunderstorms that I thought we would. So
it was thundering right before we started.
Yeah, it was cool. Hard. It was cool. Yeah. But that's nice. Sunshine came over. That was great. Okay. So we will see you back here next Tuesday. Same that time. I did that last time. So yeah, same ghost story time.
Same ghost story channel.
And same ghost story channel. Let us know what you thought about the YouTube live. I think it was a lot easier for us to deal with. So and then I think that this then is recorded, and so people can go back and see it for those of you who missed like the first couple minutes or something. Yeah. But thanks for doing this. Thanks for spending part of your afternoon with us. This is a fun thing to do.